it's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar series on international human resource management. And it's really a pleasure to see some familiar names today in the attendance list. So I think we have some permanent visitors to our webinar series, and we are very proud about that. So let me introduce myself. I'm Marianne Festing, and I'm a professor of human resource management and intercultural leadership here at ESCP Business School in Berlin, which you see in my background. And yes, I already said that, right? So this event is part of our International Human Resource Management webinar series. And those of you who have been here more often know that we started that 5 years ago. Just imagine, right? In the middle of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic, because at that time we realized it's very hard to meet personally, and we wanted to continue our exchange on international human resource management. And we had so much fun doing this webinar series that we just go on and on and on. And it's a pleasure for me to tell you that today this is our 35th webinar, right, which we are organizing together. And most of you may know that we record the webinar, and you will find them on our YouTube channel, and very soon also today's webinar. So if I speak about we, who is we? So the organizers are Mila Lazarova from the Center of Global Workforce Strategy at Simon Fraser University in Canada. Then we have Elaine Thorndale and Cara Adrian from the Center of International Human Resource Management at Penn State University. We have Miguel Olivas Lujan from Penn West University. And then there is Maral Muratbekova from the Paris campus of ESCP Business School, so my dear colleague in France. Now, let's come to our speaker of today, right? So it's a very great pleasure to welcome you, Helene Tenzer. Helene is Associate Professor of International Management at LMU Munich School of Management in Germany, so not that far away geographically from me. And her research interests include language diversity in multinational organizations, multilingual or virtual teams, leadership in multinational organizations, international HRM, and OB. And Helene serves on several editorial boards of great journals such as Academy of Management Review or Journal of World Business, and she herself has published her work in leading journals as well. And we know some of the publications from the Journal of International Business Studies, Leadership Quarterly, Journal of World Business, or Academy of Management Learning and Education. Now, today we are very excited because Helene will present her work and the work of her colleagues on the topic of AI-mediated communication in the global workplace. So with that, she is focusing on how AI is transforming the way multilingual virtual teams communicate, and she will discuss the effects of that on the global workplace and more particular also on multilingual virtual teams. So Helen, we are very happy to have you here, and we look very much forward to listening to you. And we are very happy to have so many guests in the audience for this great topic. Just to mention, the chat function is not enabled, but we have the Q&A. And if you have any questions in between, please put your questions in the Q&A. I will try to make sense out of that, and then we have a moderated discussion at the end of the talk. But now, Helene, the floor is yours. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Marion. I'm really honored to be on that webinar series, and I'm very happy about the topic, to talk about the topic I'm most excited about at that moment. To begin with, I would like to mention my co-authors with whom I am working on that topic. There is Stefan Feuerriegel, who is professor for AI in management at my institution. There's Rebecca Piecari, who has been on that webinar series before, and there is Nina Nurmi, both of whom are at Aalto. And together we explore what is the impact of AI on virtual work in the global workplace. And Marion mentioned it before. Since the pandemic, virtual work has been given an additional push. So more and more work is being performed virtually. And in global corporations, that often spans several locations, several countries, bringing together people with different mother tongues, different proficiency levels in English, the business lingua franca, to innovate together or to coordinate a company's global activities. Now, for a long time, those virtual teams collaborated just through a media that acted as conduits of their own messages. So we call that computer-mediated communication, where they say wrote an email themselves and then sent it to others, or spoke, as we do now. But all the messages were crafted by actual human beings. Now, what has come in since the great advances in generative AI is AI tools that can act as mediating forces in that communication. So AI tools can now modify what people want to write, they can augment it, or they can even write entire texts based on simple prompts. So a lot of the communication, or an increasing proportion of the communication that members of multilingual virtual teams are sending to each other, is somehow transformed by AI tools. So these are active agents participating in the communication. And we are interested in how that will transform communication and collaboration in multilingual virtual teams. So there is, of course, a great promise. My research has so far been dedicated to the impact of language barriers on collaboration, on all the hurdles it places to communication and team processes. So the promise is that AI might level the playing field and help non-native speakers catch up. So basically tearing down or at least reducing language barriers significantly. But the technology is evolving very rapidly, and there are still uncertainties that I want to spotlight in the talk today. First, there are technical uncertainties. So the communication or technology or the AI tools, they are still far from perfect. So there are some crucial flaws that need to be taken into account and that make us wonder, how effective are the tools really in facilitating multilingual virtual team communication? And then there's the human factor, how people use the tools, whether they adopt them at all, and if they do, how competently they use them, is also decisive for the final impact. So I'll present you first the capabilities and then the uncertainties, and then draw up a few scenarios where the situation might go. To conclude with saying, how can we as international management researchers contribute to that important topic? So what can AI tools now do for multilingual virtual team communication? Well, speech recognition tools, for example, can help to transcribe text. So you could have directly a written transcript of what I'm saying here after the webinar. if you wanted. Machine translation can directly support the speech recognition because you could have that transcript translated to your mother tongue, or you could, in that video call, have live captions of what I'm saying in your preferred language of choice. Text summarization is very helpful for people dealing with foreign languages because they can have long documents in a foreign language summarized concisely to digest more information faster, and they can also have it summarized in their mother tongue if they want. Now, language editing is very helpful if I'm the sender of a message. If I'm a non-native speaker of English, which I obviously am, research has shown that non-native speakers have a disadvantage in publishing in the big management journals. Well, the same is true, of course, in corporate settings when non-native speakers might, be lower down in the linguistic hierarchy in a team. So language editing can either be a real-time improvement tool. So I could have a tool on that pops up and tells me how to improve my word choice, tone, pacing, and so on. Or in written communication, I could have grammar, stylistic improvement suggestions. I could also have what I'm writing be attuned to a particular style that I wish to achieve. Now, the most agentic version of AI tools would be language generation tools. So team members could just write a short prompt if they want to, I don't know, create a product brochure. They can input some text snippets in their respective native languages and then prompt the AI to create a coherent text of a particular length and style in the desired language for that product brochure. So a lot of help for non-native speakers of the team's shared language, and a lot of promise how language barriers could be broken down. Basically, making a lot of my research from the past 15 years obsolete? Question mark, right? Because the technology, as I said, is not perfect. So language barriers will not entirely go away. Because let's take machine translation as an example. Translation is not just a mechanical exercise of translating word by word, literally. That is what the AI is trained for, but there are a lot of complexities in languages. So there are some terms that exist in some languages and not in others, like the Chinese guanxi. There are other terms that have different connotations. So knowledge management in the American management literature just has no equivalent with similar connotations, say in Russian. And we do not know what the AI does with such asymmetries between languages. Also, politeness is expressed very differently. In English, we do not have so many means to express hierarchical difference compared to Japanese, for example, where there are very complex linguistic means to encode appropriate politeness. Also, there are pragmatic differences in how people perform particular speech acts, how directly, how indirectly they speak, how they convey their messages. So the AI doesn't know all that. So it's a black box. We do not know how it makes translation decisions. We can suspect that it thinks in English because it's most of the leading open AI models have been trained primarily with English data sets. But translation might be flawed due to the limited context awareness of AI. So the second problem, the second limitation, is algorithmic bias and uneven language coverage. So I mentioned before that most of the training data is actually from the Anglo world and from a few big other languages, but the AI is just not as good in languages that are spoken by smaller communities. And many of the world's 7,000 languages are not covered in AI models. So people speaking those languages cannot use the tools in the same way. Also, the training data is typically consists of web content. So it crawls Wikipedia or news sites, but also like older texts such as, I don't know, American literature of the 19th century. And with that, it soaks up all the human biases and stereotypes that have been in those texts. And that is reflected, research has shown, in the language output. So a study had ChatGPT create reference letters for the same position, same prompt, just varied the name of the applicant from first a male, then a female applicant. And guess what? The reference letters for the female were like, she's a very good team player, she's a warm person, and always helpful. And for the male applicant, the AI wrote that he is a good leader, a good decision maker, reproducing stereotypes that we are working very hard to overcome. So the question is, can that bias be overcome in the training data? And if it cannot, how might it affect, maybe even perpetuate human stereotypes? Now, that was the technical side. There's also the human side. And that depends on how will people work with the technology? How will they adopt it? Do they fear or do they embrace it? And if they embrace it, do they use it competently? So that can create very different outcomes for team processes. For example, communication patterns. So I mentioned before that most of the AI output in large models such as ChatGPT will follow rather English-centric communication patterns, so more linear, concise style. Now, speakers from other cultures, other mother tongues, such as Mandarin, they would use more circular discursive patterns that are not reproduced so much in AI-generated language. And if we follow language accommodation theory, we could expect that multilingual virtual team members will converge gradually towards that style as AI-generated language is used more and more. Now, on the one hand, we could say that reduces misunderstandings. On the other hand, we could say other speech styles are getting suppressed, are getting lost. And research has shown that they are a creative element, that they can contribute to the superior innovative performance of multilingual teams. So if that gets lost, communication could also be impoverished. Also, communication resources. I mean, people do not just have verbal communication resources or knowledge of vocabulary and syntax in a foreign language. They also have cultural resources. So knowing what is appropriate to talk about in a particular culture. They have sociolinguistic resources. knowing what is appropriate to say in a particular situation. In the best case, people would just add the support of AI tools to their existing resources, so enriching them. In a less optimistic scenario, people would get lazy and say, why do we bother? We'll just have it translated. AI does it for me. Why do I even have to study foreign languages anymore? It's so hard. So that could actually, on the middle or longer term, deteriorate people's like face-to-face speaking or understanding competencies in a foreign language. So also team processes could be affected in different ways. So emotional climate. I've written in my own work on language barriers about language anxiety that is experienced by non-native speakers of foreign language or of a shared language in a team who feel that they would be laughed at or not taken so seriously or be evaluated negatively or maybe not catch important information. So that stress and anxiety might be mitigated if non-native speakers of the team's language have all those amazing new tools at their disposal. Also, research has shown that the tone of most AI-generated language is rather positive, more so than human language often is. So, does that improve the emotional climate in multilingual virtual teams? That would be great, wouldn't it? But on the other hand, we have among many people in the workplace and elsewhere a certain fear of AI. That might be fear of the unknown, fear of new technologies, fear of not being able to catch up with rapidly evolving, always new tools, but also fear of something that's a black box, that's intransparent, where people don't know how it works and what it does. Or people just watch too much Terminator and fear that AI will reach its own consciousness and pursue actively its own negative agenda. So if those fears prevail among many team members, that can create also a negative emotional climate. Similar with trust. My research has shown that language barriers are a problem for trust formation in teams because those with lower proficiency are often not perceived as competent, inhibiting competence-based trust. Also, linguistic misunderstandings can lead to disconfirmed expectations, disappointments. So integrity-based trust, based on the perceived reliability of the colleagues, can be inhibited by language barriers. Or if people switch languages, others feel excluded. So think that they are not benevolent. So also benevolence-based trust suffers from language barriers. Now, the AI support could reduce those negative effects, thereby helping trust formation. But then we have those problems again of people not trusting the AI tools that are now augmenting, changing, generating messages. And they may also not trust those team colleagues who use the AI. And studies have shown that people think their own AI use is perfectly fine, is ethical, is justified, but often suspect that others are using in problematic ways. It's like those surveys about driving that 85% of people think that they are an above average driver, which cannot be, right? So you also overestimate maybe your own skills, but also have a negative perception of what others do. So trust and suspicion might arise indirectly from apprehension about AI integration. Equity and inclusion is also a big topic. Language barriers, they lead to inequity in terms of power distortions based on people's language skills. So the native speakers of a team's language, they have higher rhetorical power and often also more influence in the team, better access to information and resources. That playing field could be leveled by AI tools if the technology advances further and if they are used competently. That would be a big hope, right? But also new inequities might arise if not everybody has the same access to those AI tools. So I mentioned before the speakers of small minority languages that are maybe not in the AI's training data or in which the AI is not performing as well. They are disadvantaged. Also, speech recognition apparently still has issues with particular dialects or regional accents. So those speakers cannot use it. And again, standard speech, standard English is privileged. So inequity is still problematic. Plus, think of those who are less comfortable in using the AI. And research shows that this is often a generational thing, that younger people are more eager and willing to snatch it up versus older, more senior employees, more hesitant, and also developing less AI literacy, possibly being excluded from AI-mediated communication. And that also has implication for inclusion. So the feeling that you are part of the team and accepted in the team, no matter of your background, without pressure to adapt. Language barriers are an inclusion problem often, as people are excluded from conversations in languages that they do not understand. Or there is linguistic ostracism that they just cannot jump into a conversation, even if they roughly understand, not fluent enough to contribute. So here, the AI tools might again help. But then there's the bias that I mentioned before that creates a whole new problem for inclusion. I mentioned gender bias might set back the female inclusion agenda in higher management position if the AI holds the stereotypes that maybe we have already overcome and brings them back in the language that it generates. That is also true for minority culture, racial stereotypes, all the stereotypes that humans have had and embedded in their texts that are somewhere on the internet. The AI soaks it up and brings it back. So debiasing is necessary. So I created, together with my co-authors, 4 different scenarios where the AI integration might take multilingual virtual teams from very optimistic to rather dystopian scenarios. So let's look at them one by one. The scenario we are all hoping for is the one where AI researchers, maybe with the help of international management people, can improve technologies further, figure out how to make them context sensitive, to improve translation quality, to make also generated language culturally sensitive, where debiasing through more diverse data sets, but also through human feedback on AI output, can reduce algorithmic bias, where language representation beyond English is improved, and where simultaneously people embrace the new technologies very positively, that they see the capabilities, want to use it, want to learn about how it works, but are also open to recognizing the limitations of the tools and use them productively and prudently, right? Where team members do use the AI tools to help them catch up with the conversation, but where they critically check the output and use their own head, their own cross-cultural competence and linguistic resources to correct biased output or to check for hallucinations and other errors. Then AI could really be a great helper for multilingual virtual teams, making them more productive and more equitable and more inclusive. Could also be, however, that the technological progress is as great as in scenario one. So the technology would really hold the potential to reduce language barriers, but people might still be apprehensive. So, I mean, we all sit somewhere on that spectrum, and we know that people have very different opinions on AI, some like outright rejecting it. And if there are many of those who are dominated by fear and do not want it to be used, then there will be a negative discourse about AI, about how do we regulate it? How do we police it? How do we keep people from using it? So that will be a problem for non-native speakers of the team language who would actually benefit from the technology, who might use it surreptitiously, secretly, not letting others know. That would create a negative emotional climate current of undercurrent of mistrust. And if people are revealed to have secretly used, let's say, editing or language generation tools, that might reinforce negative stereotypes about minorities or non-native speakers of the team's language. So that would be a paradoxical situation of technology is going great, but people are not adopting it or resisting it. The like flip side scenario that would also be paradoxical could be saying AI research cannot get rid of the problems the technology has now, like context insensitivity, bias, uneven language coverage. The AI researchers I talked to say they do not know if they can get rid of it or enough investment will be made into debiasing, for example. So if that does not happen and the technology retains its flaws, but at the same time, people are so enthusiastic about it, that's problematic in its own way. I mean, we all know that person who is now using ChatGPT for everything, thinking it can do all, and underestimating the dangers, the limitations. If people use a flawed technology without critically scrutinizing its output, well, errors will happen because sometimes the AI, let's say, hallucinates an action point in a meeting summary. People act on it, and if there is uncritical adoption, that the fault will be blamed on the humans and not on the technology. And also, if people stop using their own cross-cultural competence to evaluate the AI-generated language, misunderstandings happen, holdups for the team happen, disruptions. So that can damage team processes in new ways. And finally, the dystopian scenario, so to say, where the shortcomings of the technology persist, and also people don't appreciate it, don't want to use it, reject it. So that will actually make the situation worse compared to how it was before AI integration was an option, because then we have that fear, that mistrust, that apprehension, those negative discourses about regulating, policing it, that will place an additional burden on the team processes in multilingual virtual teams. So all of those four scenarios are, of course, now exaggerated situations, just to show you what different effects the technological development or the human factor can have. Most likely we'll have a mix of them somehow. We'll have pockets of that one or that other type, depending on the mix of people we have. But I think the scenarios are educational because they can help us think how we can bring about the scenario that we want to see. And I think international management scholars can help. So our competitive advantage in international management, we often say, is awareness of context. How does a particular local context influence management? Well, we can bring that into training the tools. We can team up with AI researchers, as I have done. I teamed up with Stefan and I learned so much, and he did too. And so we can be the ones who give the human feedback to the AI, who can help to diversify training data sets, try to source more diverse data, but also make developers aware of where more context sensitivity in the tools is needed and where biases might be harmful. But what we can do even better, I think, is address the human side of the AI adoption. And the key to that, I think, is AI literacy, or more specifically, literacy in AI-mediated communication. And pioneering studies in that area define AI-mediated communication literacy as comfort in using the technology, so not fearing it, but feeling confident that you can do it, and you like using it, you see the capabilities. Understanding of the technology, so a basic understanding of how it works, how it generates the output, how you need to prompt it for the desired result, but also understanding the limitations that I just mentioned. Because only if people understand those can they critically scrutinize the output and correct it for errors and biases. And AI MC literacy also includes competent usage, so people knowing how to apply the tools and integrating them effectively into their daily work. Now, I think as IM researchers, we can help to make global virtual team members aware of that need. And we can maybe help to design training programs for that. We understand well the cultural and linguistic nuances of global communication. We can integrate that into training programs better than like pure AI researchers could. We know how to engage demographics that might generally be more resistant, be those older generations or minority groups. And we know how to design the training programs to cater to culture-specific learning styles. So I think we can make a difference here. But beyond that, of course, there are so many opportunities for us to study the phenomenon further. So the technological uncertainties, we can find out in our research which context information actually do the models need to produce culturally appropriate output. And I'm doing an experiment study right now, for example, experimenting with different prompts, translating emails that were written by US American corporate employees for subordinate to supervisor communication in problematic situations, translating those to Japanese with different prompts, and together with Japanese collaborators, and later on with online participants, we'll evaluate which outputs are considered most appropriate by a Japanese recipient audience. So those kinds of studies, I think, will be very interesting to see what can be done about more context-sensitive AI tools. Also, we can study what happens with the biases and stereotypes in AI. How do they influence us? How do they influence human thinking? How do they influence team members? If those biases suddenly come back in AI-generated languages, does that perpetuate human biases and stereotypes? If so, how? That would be interesting. Now, communication in virtual teams, does it get faster, more efficient? What's the discussion quality output with compared to without AI mediation? How does that affect routine tasks? How does that affect more innovative tasks? What's the long-term impact on people's language skills? Will people actually get lazier with the AI support, as many fear? Or will they just add it to become better communicators? And how to educate people in AI-mediated communication. Now, with the team dynamics, I mentioned emotional climate and trust, but those were just two team processes or emergent states that I picked out. There are so many others: cognitive, affective, behavioral, team processes, and emergent states that might be affected by AI mediation. And all of them, I think, would deserve rich empirical research. Equity and inclusion, that's really a topic that I find very important, that I'm passionate about. So it will be interesting to see where is lingua franca usage going, for example. Do we still need a common working language in virtual teams if the translation tools are so ubiquitous, right? Can't people just speak in their own mother tongues and others have it immediately synchronously translated to their mother tongue, as we have, I don't know, in the European Parliament with simultaneous translators, just no longer human, but machine translation? How will that affect participation levels among speakers of different mother tongues in a team? Again, how does that impact biases, stereotypes? And how can the tools be improved to really give a push to equity and inclusion in multilingual virtual teams? So this is what I'm excited about at the moment. This is what I'm puzzled about. And this is, I think, where a lot is happening in multilingual virtual teams, and where we should stay up to date to find out how exactly is that new technology affecting global collaboration. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm really looking forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Helena, for your presentation. It was very eye-opening, and I think it's really one of the first uh, really thorough discussions about and researches about we can use AI, what are the positive effects, what are the negative effects of using AI, what are the psychological consequences, what are technological implications. So very complete discussion also with your scenarios. So thank you very much for that. And I would like to invite all our participants to ask your questions in the Q&A, right? We have quite a lot of comments here. The comments are a bit difficult to treat, but I will, of course, make sure that you will get all of the comments. But we also have some questions, right? And there's the first one by Chris Brewster. So hello, Chris. How much does accent impact what you have been discussing? No?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chris, for mentioning that. So accent is often a barrier in speech recognition tools still. So those tools struggle with particular regional accents. So that is a technological flaw. But on the other hand, if the tools improve further, they could actually relieve that mental or that cognitive load that we get from listening to people with different accents if we have the direct subtitles, right? So sometimes if we are not accustomed to a particular way of speaking, a particular accent, we find it very exhausting to listen to those people. And I mean, direct subtitles in a video conference would be really helpful, but we need to make sure the technologies don't exclude particular demographics.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting point. I have another question here, and one person says the most important areas of inquiry are the impacts on team influence, power, and leadership. What do you think? Is that an area to focus on?
I mean, I can connect it to my own research on language barriers and power distortions. And so I found, based on a qualitative study, that language is power, basically. And that those who are non-native speakers in a language find it hard to enact an assigned leadership position, or experts might not be heard, whereas native speakers, even if they are subordinates, can just basically play a leader against the wall with their rhetorics. That effect, that distortion by language could be leveled out, ideally, hopefully, if the non-native speakers have help and can catch up.
Yeah, yeah. So this notion of help, right, is an important one. What do you think does it mean for the education of our students, right? So how would you go for that? Because on the one side, of course, they need to use AI, they need to learn how to use it, but how can we teach them about this sensitivity towards all of the issues you just mentioned?
I mean, with the students, it opens like a completely new can of worms, right? I think we have all been thinking intensely about them writing seminar papers and stuff with ChatGPT. But I think it's a technology they are going to use anyway. It's like saying you can't use the internet or you can't use a calculator. So I think it's come to stay. So we should definitely integrate it and encourage them to experiment, try out different things, different prompts. And I mean, in my seminars, I really make it a topic of its own. How do we use AI in research? Where does it help us? Where does it not help us? What are the dangers? And I ask them always to include an AI reflection, like a 2-pager after each seminar paper, saying what did they do, what worked, what did not work, what did they try out with which tools. I think if they actively reflect on that, they learn to use it more critically. That's my take, but I would be very happy if you had better solutions.
Yeah, I was thinking about sensitizing them about all the issues you just mentioned, right? And to add that from my experience from yesterday, we had a discussion with executives. So to what extent can you really be culturally sensitive with AI at the moment? And I think this is one question which results from your analysis, right? So is it really possible to be culturally sensitive? Are we there already? Or does it still need some time? And yeah, you had some sentences about that. So how do you see that in a nutshell?
I'm still researching that myself, and a lot of experiments and qualitative, quantitative studies need to be done on that still. But I think right now, I mean, to put it bluntly, ChatGPT is still an American with most of the training data that went into it. Interestingly, it produces more culturally appropriate output if it's prompted in the language of a particular culture. So if I prompt in Japanese, the output will be more appropriate because then it draws on the Japanese training data it has. But if I prompt it in English or in German, it will not yield a culturally appropriate translation and response. So we need more system prompts, or we need to learn how to prompt it more skillfully to make it more culturally sensitive.
Indeed. There's an additional question by Frank Horwitz who says, well, how important is it for multilingual or multicultural global team members to meet directly face to face, especially in the early stage, and then periodically for a project to build relationships and trust? So is it enough just to meet virtually to use AI, or what is this interrelationship between face-to-face and virtual AI-mediated communication?
Yeah, that's an important one, and I mean, it has been debated in virtual teams research, irrespective of AI, that many say it would be really helpful to have like periodical check-ins to really create a human connection, and that cannot be replaced by AI-mediated communication, I think. The danger is just that if people rely on the machine translation all the time while they are sitting behind the screen, will it maybe be harder for them once they meet in person? I mean, I've had some conversation while traveling with the phone, right? I'm speaking into my phone, and the phone spoke in Japanese to, I don't know, the agent in the hotel. But you wouldn't do that in a business meeting. So people need to be reminded that their own language skills are still something to be invested in, I think.
Yeah. Interesting answer, and maybe a link also to your previous research, right?
Yes.
I have two questions now. I combine them, and they target different groups. So on the one side, the question is, how can we make sure that also elder people will have access and use AI competently? So this is one target group. And the other question, a bit different, could AI-mediated communication support neurodivergent employees, right? For example, in understanding these communicative nuances, tones, meanings. So two, let's say, diversity groups, right? How would you see that?
That's an important one, and I must admit, I haven't read anything. I haven't seen any research on that so far. So I think that's what we really need, right? I mean, in some countries, we have rapidly aging demographics, and we need everyone to be able to participate. If AI-mediated communication is the call of the hour, we do need programs tailored for them. But at that moment, I'm afraid I do not know how to design them exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Same with neurodivergent individuals. Yeah.
mm, mm. So also very interesting field for future research, right?
Yes.
So, would you say that anything you have done before in your research on languages, on teams, and so on, is really obsolete? That was your starting point.
Not
I'm not
not
so
at that
sure, but
not at that point, but I mean, I really hope that it will become less of a barrier. So, I mean, we spoke before the meeting, and a colleague said that in her executive education program, language came up again and again. So it is still an issue. Um, but I mean, maybe we have that kind of AI Babel fish helping us in the medium term. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I was always fascinated by that fish you put in your ear and you just understand each other seamlessly. So I don't think it will go that far, but I mean, hopefully a few steps in that direction. But I don't think my research will be entirely irrelevant. So I don't see that utopian scenario.
no, that's definitely where I would agree to. But we have quite a lot of questions here about this human dimension, right? To what extent will the human dimension stay? To what extent can this be replaced by AI? So maybe you have a summarizing answer for that as well.
Yeah. I mean, we can never replace human collaborators by AI. That is not the goal. I mean, AI-mediated communication is just a mediator. Question is, how much of a matter of course will it become to use it? I mean, the internet was a similarly disruptive technology, and it is widely adopted now, but not entirely. I mean, I have people in my family who are just like opposed to using the internet. So I think we'll always have some resistance. I think models also need to become like AI models more transparent to foster human trust so that they know how it's working. So I think we'll always have to work on including people and building a positive attitude.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would be your next steps in this research? And this would be my final question, as we have already nearly reached the end of our webinar.
I think my next steps will be finding out what does the AI do to team processes. So that's what I'm excited about. So I'm doing experiments now, and a PhD student of mine is starting a qualitative investigation in how are teams actually using it at this point. What does it do to change the team processes? Once we understand that, we can start doing something about it.
Yeah, that sounds very challenging, very interesting. I wish you good luck for that. And I'm sorry for those questions who could not be answered due to time reasons. We will give all of the comments and all of the questions to Helene so that she knows what she has triggered in you in terms
Thank
of
you.
further thoughts, right? So I'm sure that this is a topic we will talk a lot about in the future. And thank you so much, Helene, for giving us this first impetus to work on that with this webinar. So thank you very much. And thank you very much also to the audience. I would like to announce that we will have the next webinar on the 30th of June. And Caro will put that into the chat, so you can already register for that. The topic is staying abroad, unpacking the embeddedness and careers of long-term expatriates. And we have a panel here. So we have Jan Selmer, we have Sebastian Reiche, Margaret Schaefer, and Stefan Joos, who will discuss about this issue. So another, I think, interesting webinar to register for, as I said, on the 30th of June. Then I would like to draw your attention again. We already did it last time to the International HR Conference in Dubai. So you will also see the link in the chat. It's end of October. And if you're working hard, you can submit your paper in June, and then you might be able to see us all in presence there and discuss with us and with other people on international HR. So this is the Dubai conference. And then we have another conference. Unfortunately, the deadline is already gone, but it's the Human Resource Management International Conference in Kenya, which will happen from the 2nd to the 5th of June. You can still register, and you also see a link in our chat. So please, if you're interested, register for this conference. And for now, I would like to thank again very much my co-organizers. A special and big thank you to Helene Tenzer. And goodbye, everybody. Thank you for attending and for discussing with us. And see you next time in June, hopefully.